And as we start our Monday Twitch live show with this beautiful slideshow of the football that was, I'm already feeling nostalgic. It's going to be one of those episodes, actually an unprecedented episode in our podcast. As always, I'm Tommaso from the Anglo-Italian Pod. You can find us on Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod.
And I'm Rory. As always, you can find us on Twitter at Italian Anglopod. And this week, we are joined by a guest, Adam, from the Hopeless Wanderer Pod. How are we today, Adam?
Yeah, great. Thank you. How about you guys? How you been keeping?
Not bad. Work was, I'll be honest, I was in my lessons and my students were getting roughly about 35-40% of my attention as my phone was buzzing and Twitter was going insane. So, yeah, a bit of a long day, but not bad. Tommy?
I had a good day. It was kind of funny yesterday when I saw the first post on Instagram, seeing that this thing was actually concretely happening. We've been hearing about it over and over again, and finally the news leaked, and all these domino pieces started falling on each other. How did you react to that, Adam?
I have to say, initially, I kind of felt like, wow. This is really a gut-wrenching experience if you're a fan of those clubs, because there's lots of people involved in the process of making those key decisions right now, but there was definitely no consultation. And do you know what? It was a real struggle to kind of put myself into those shoes and kind of say, what the hell would I do in that scenario? If I was that fan, what would I do? I mean, it's easy for me to kind of say, I'd boycott the club, because, I don't want that for the greater good of football. But they're a club that you've been supporting or potentially brought up to support. And, there's lots of traditions that go alongside that. I mean, it's bad enough we've had a pandemic and we've been torn away from our clubs in that kind of emotional sense. But, yeah, I dread to think what you guys are going through right now, because, there's a million thoughts going through your heads, around the approach. And that's just everyone. And you saw it across all the social media platforms. And yeah, I mean, where does it end? And that kind of was the first indication of, wow, football is going to lose its soul right now. I don't know about you guys.
Right. So today, Rory addressed me right away when he saw me on camera. He was like, "What the fuck are you wearing?" And I told him, "Look, Rory, just because your girlfriend cheats on you, it doesn't mean that you have to cheat on your girlfriend." I think that actually this was an important moment to display my colors. I'm an Inter fan. I've always been. This is a break that I did not see coming, especially for my club, but it's happened, and we need to take a look at the different sides of it before we actually jump to conclusions. But yeah, the overall feeling is pretty grim. We would like to start this show with a little monologue from each of us. Not really a monologue, but just like how everybody has been feeling, what everybody has been considering today, what thoughts we've had. And after each one of us will touch on these topics, we will definitely address anything that you're writing on the chat, unless it's Liverpool content sponsored by Chris. And then we just want to have a discussion about the potential birth of this Super League. So, Rory Criscuolo, long-time Arsenal fan, you feel like maybe Julius Caesar being stabbed by his own child today.
Well, it's not it's not the first time Arsenal have caused me great deals of pain over the past couple of years, but this is definitely a new type of pain that they've subjected me to. Yeah, well, when I was talking about you wearing the shirt, you know me, Tommy, I'm a man of extremes. It's all or nothing. And at the moment, I was kind of weighing up my football shirt, which football shirts to hang behind me, which is a weekly decision every week. And I was looking at the Arsenal shirts, and I was like, I don't think I can even wear you now. I was going to play Football Manager, but my save is with Arsenal, and it just felt weird. I was like, I don't know where I go from here. Look, I have no family ties to Arsenal. I was, obviously, you can tell by my accent, I'm not from London. I picked the club almost at random as a child, but I fell in love with the club because Arsenal always seemed like it had something different about them. They had a certain level of class. They had a certain level of you behave this way if you are part of the Arsenal. They had a different way of behaving and presenting themselves, from the stadium to Herbert Chapman to George Graham to Wenger, these managers that have been big personalities and principled men, and to the last lines that Wenger said when he left the club of, please keep hold of the values of the club and look after it. You need to maintain this. And the exact opposite has happened since he left. I am absolutely disgusted with the club, with the owners. Arsenal fans haven't been happy with the Kroenkes for a long time, more because they don't back us in the market than any kind of moral or humanitarian code. It's more we want Mbappe that they're annoyed about. But we know what Stan Kroenke is about. We know the type of owner he is. We know what he's like in the NFL. We know what he's like in the NBA and the MLB. All of his teams are fairly average. He's about making profits. Am I surprised he's part of this? No, not at all. But I am disgusted with the fact that in a year where there's been a global pandemic, people are out of jobs, we have made 55 people redundant, claiming poverty, while he has been negotiating this behind their backs. That is absolutely despicable. There is no defence for that. And while simultaneously offering Willian and Aubameyang nearly £1 million a week each on 3-year contracts. There is nothing that this club has done that is in any way morally, there's no way you can support it. There's no way you can defend it. It is awful. The whole day I've been sat going, how do I pick a new club? How do I watch football? If this goes ahead, I can't support this. The club are happy to bang on about the history. They're happy to dine on the Rocky Rocastle Memorial a few weeks ago. Remember who you are and what you represent. They had it plastered all over the stadium, selling T-shirts, selling scarves, whatever it is. They're happy to do it, but they've done it all and they've sold it all in a split second because that guy wants more profit. It's disgusting. I'm absolutely just I can't express it. It's just heartbreaking. This is a club I've supported 25 years, and I don't know where we are. I don't know where we are.
Wow, man, that touched me. Adam, as I dry my tears, please tell me what team you support and how did you react to the news in general?
So, for those that don't know, I support Wycombe Wanderers. I've been very fortunate in that respect because I've seen football in a different light. And I'm a member of the Football Trust as well, Wycombe Wanderers Football Trust. So to put some context, obviously, we were in a position where we almost lost our club as well. We were in a position where our previous owner, kind of like these American owners, had ambitions about driving the club forward, but we didn't have the attendances to back that up. And location-wise, we're a suburb outside of London, lots of Spurs, Chelsea, Arsenal fans are season ticket holders. They commute regularly into London for their matches and might have seen us over a weekend when they've had no football, right? But generally, we were a club supported by about 4,000 strong, but we had £7 million in debt. Now, for a club that is our size, there's no way we were going to maintain that. So we were in our first season, Gareth Ainsworth took over as manager. We were literally on the cusp of completely being oblivion. We were at that point, if we hadn't stayed up on the last game of the season, we would have gone kaput, basically. And the Supporters Trust took full ownership of the club, rebuilt it over time, got into a sustainable position, a bit like your German model, and we're in a championship these days. Now, let me kind of go what's happened in the last 24 hours and reflect on that. So what we've seen is probably the FIFA fanboy dream. That is literally what's happened. We've got a self-professed clubs that decide, do you know what? We want more. We've had enough of being dictated by our regular leagues. They haven't bowed down and let us do whatever we wanted. And to an extent, that's being kind of mirrored across UEFA for the Champions League. And you get to a point, I suppose, where you're a fan of a club, but you're no longer part of that fabric anymore. And that's what it feels like when I'm looking from afar. Like, I'm lucky enough to be at a club that's owned by a owner that really wants to keep it sustainable and keep it going for future generations. You don't get that sense with these owners of these self-proclaimed Super League clubs. You get this kind of vision of them trying to make more and more money for whose gain? No one but their own. And, the likes of Daniel Levy is a good example of someone that really, he's all about the money. He's not about the club. He doesn't care if he tramples on tradition. It's for him, it's about how can he make it more prestigious to people buy into that. And you can see that by the stadium they've built and the fact that during the pandemic, they had to get government loans to support that club. That says a lot, right? And you've still got it going on right now. You've got loads of sponsorship deals that even Dulux took the mick out of that club recently. So that says it all, you know, that they don't care about that so much. There is no much that love. I don't know. I feel really at a loss because there's so many things that are going in my head right now. And if I was one of those supporters like you two are in that position right now, I am really at a loss. I don't know where do you start by kind of contemplating what do you do next? Because, you know, it feels like a knife to the heart. It really does. It's killed you. And I'm hoping, like we said offline, we're hoping that fans boycott them or at least stand up against this and kind of send that message of your estimations and all of your kind of thoughts around how you can grow the Super League ain't going to sustain. They'll be gone within a few seconds as long as you guys kind of stand up to it. That's the hard bit, though, because I was looking at a Tottenham Hotspur supporters trust statement this morning, and the amount of comments that were like, do you know what? Actually, I'm happy to do the Super League. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, literally, have you not been a supporter long enough to actually understand the history of Tottenham Hotspur? Granted, we mock it. We absolutely mock it. But this is the thing. It seems like there's a generation gap. And that's what I meant by the comment of this is a FIFA fanboy's dream. This is where the owners have taken that model and taken it further. And obviously, Andy, who unfortunately couldn't join us right now, he wanted us to refer to that fact of no one said anything when obviously the Glazers put Man United into depth. No one said anything about Henry and that group, kind of what they do in America, because we know they do franchises. And obviously we've got the Abu Dhabi lot that come into it. Obviously, Roman Abramovich, for example, at Chelsea, we've never been really sure what his kind of angle is around where he wants to progress the team. So it's just, yeah, you're at a loss as to where they want to progress this. And the funny thing is, someone's got to be a Burnley in that Super League. Someone has to be the Sassuolo. Someone has to be a real shit team, right?
I think we've got that covered, don't worry.
This is it. So someone has to lose. And obviously Spurs are probably there for that reason alone, right? But, you know, because they're not going to win it, let's be honest. But let's go just back a few steps. This is the wrong decision. This is going to ruin football and potentially those clubs. Those clubs could be obliterated by the fact that you've got some selfish owners. And I really feel sorry for those fans right now.
Rory, you had something to say on that?
Yeah, it's rough out there, eh? But do you think that this means, and what I hope is that all of this will turn the focus back towards lower league football? Do you think that if this does continue, places like Wickham and clubs like that will see an increase in attendances once we are allowed back into stadium?
You might see it, but I still think you're going to have those hardcore Arsenal fans, Tottenham's fans, whatever, of all these clubs that genuinely want to stick with them. And that's probably a bit like, for example, Wimbledon, who turned into that franchise MK Dons, right? There was still a few of those fans that were like, they're my club. They're the club that I knew from Plough Lane, for example. So there is going to be an element of very small margin, but there will be those who are hardcore. But yeah, I feel sorry because I think a lot of those fans might just go, do you know what? I've had enough of football. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah. I think you make a good point. I think they might just call it quits and think if I can't support Arsenal or Chelsea or City, then I'm not going to support anyone. It's grim, but let's get an Italian perspective on it, Tommy. What's the reaction been in Gazzetta dello Sport? What's been the reaction to Agnelli, and how are you feeling about it?
All right. So I think that the first thing for any listener who maybe has not fully understood what the fuck is going to happen. So basically, the 12. Look at me on the camera. I'm making big time quotation marks. The 12 biggest clubs in Europe They're kind of fed up with the Champions League, and maybe some of them are kind of fed up of losing 7 Champions League finals, being eliminated by Porto, being eliminated by Lyon. Can't think of the name of the team.
It's not fair. Yeah,
It's not fair. Yeah, it's really escaping my mind. But such teams, including actually the team that I support, Inter Milan, they decided to create this sort of coalition and create a closed system, actually with a very small opening, maybe to 3 teams that they might change year after year, but basically a closed cluster for a separate competition aside the national leagues and the UEFA Champions League and the whole UEFA circuit. Of course, UEFA have been outspoken about this from right off the bat. They've said that this is illegal. This is kind of like a breach of contract, kind of. You cannot do this. They've been menacing like fines and whatnot. And the fans, of course, are opposed to this because this would mean that a lower league team or simply a Porto wouldn't have a chance to win the competition in which the biggest teams in Europe compete. Now, I think that there are a lot of different things to consider here. And number one is, of course, that Juventus are still being filmed by the Amazon Prime crew as part of their special, don't worry, All or Nothing, which will air next season. Now, when the news came out about the Super League, I had just seen Atalanta defeat Juventus 1-0 at the 87th minute. And Atalanta are the first team that Agnelli very nonchalantly and publicly threw shade on as one who didn't fully deserve to be in the Champions League solely because of their hard work. So I think that their karma really played it right, like perfectly. You get defeated by the underdogs in the day in which you declare like your elitarian big boys club. But then, as we were saying off mic, I think that there are a lot of things to consider in here, and especially, and I'm talking from my perspective as a person who, unlike Adam, has always supported one of these powerhouses in football, despite not getting that many titles throughout my lifetime. Still, a monetary, like an economically strong powerhouse. And I have been supporting all of this. And as I remember when my dad stopped watching football because he said, I don't have that same thrill that I used to have before, I was honestly very bummed because he was the person that had got me started with football. And I didn't fully understand it. I thought he was being just an adult and he was being very dramatic. I was like, you know, things change, you boomer. Like, things are destined to evolve. But I think that now, for the second time in 1 year, I've gotten like a strong blow to the stomach. Like last year, all of a sudden, soccer cannot be played anymore. Fans are not allowed in the stadium. They're going to play in an empty San Siro. And now the Champions League anthem will not be a thing anymore. There is going to be this elitarian league. And the fact, man, honestly, I'm slightly claustrophobic. And the fact that it's a closed circuit really makes me anxious. I'm like, I will get tired of discussing Arsenal Inter in the podcast with Rory so many times a year.
Just why because we'll batter you every time, that's all. Just because we're going to batter you, that's all.
Yeah, definitely. Why is
when we take Hakimi, when he takes Hakimi and he comes back to San Siro.
Exactly. So why do we celebrate a birthday? Because it happens once a year. Why do we celebrate PSG Bayern? Because potentially it happens once every 5 years. But for that to happen, and I'm already talking about the structure of the tournament that I don't think is appealing. My friend Fabio, who is watching us right now, reminded me of something that and I just checked it, in the early 2000s, like 2003, 2004, there was a different Champions League format with a sort of league table and then the winners of the league table that would play in the playoffs. They ended up changing that system because it wasn't appealing to the people. So I think that this new thing is wrong for the structure, but of course it lacks of ethics big time. But again, the ethics have been missing in football and in sports in general since forever. I believe that it's unfortunate to I tell myself this lie every day, and we all do, I think Rory and Adam too, that sports are fair. In the end, in time we say, È il campo che parla. The pitch is going to speak. But honestly, if we think of sports in general, consider the Olympics, football World Cups, many other things. Consider all these competitions. How many of them, in the end, it turned out they were fixed? How many athletes were doped? We tend to think that sports is the last standing stronghold of ethics and morality, when it's clearly not anymore. We like to
But I
believe
don't
it
mean
is.
that.
Go for
But
it.
I
Go
don't
for
think
it.
that. I don't think that doesn't mean we shouldn't expect it. I don't think that doesn't mean that we should, like, if there's any part of society that we can please keep clean from corruption and fucking cronyism or whatever you want to call it, can it please be sport? Can we please try and keep it? And we know it's not level. It's not a level playing field. You've got like Spezia playing against Juventus when Juventus have 100 times the resources they have. We know it's not a level playing field, but we have to try and aim for that, right? But if we're talking about a level playing field, Chris is playing devil's advocate, so he's got a question for us. Just as a flip view, the 6 clubs in the Prem have felt got at also by the other 14 clubs who always stick together. Why should a club who has spent 1 year in the Prem have the same voting rights? Now, this was part of Project Big Picture, which was pushed earlier in the year, right? They wanted more of a voting share. They wanted to be immune from relegation, I think, and they wanted other certain benefits. What do we think to this? Not to put you on the spot, but Adam, what do you think of this question?
Yeah, I mean, how long we got on this, to be fair. I mean, these clubs have always been gunning for more money, haven't they? From the moment, and we're not talking literally from last year, we're talking even prior to that. So there's always been that kind of feeling that they're trying to ditch us over, and get at us. And those other 14 clubs, we've got clubs that have been more established than some of the ones we're talking in that top 6. So, things like Southampton, for example, clubs that have been part of the Premier League when it first ever started. So again, the Premier League was a bit of a stitch up when it first got established as well. So, this has been a continuous evolution of, I suppose, clubs trying to get even more power in the game itself. But there has to come a point where we kind of say enough is enough. And how much of this is an enjoyment factor anymore? Because right now, while I appreciate what we're saying is a club like Norwich City comes into the league and has rights suddenly to vote on the future of football. But yeah, they've earned that right to be in that position. Why shouldn't they have that right to kind of share that displeasure around what's happening right now? Because they're probably not in a position to kind of compete with those other clubs. So yeah, for me, it stinks.
Yeah, it's all very grim. And Mr. Kobayashi makes a very good point. The founding clubs of English football aren't Arsenal, Chelsea, United, it's Stoke, it's Burnley, it's Wolverhampton Wanderers, it's Preston North End, who were the first team to do an unbeaten season. It's like it, and it's something I was talking about earlier on in the day with Chris as well. Like, why this slice of history are we picking? Why not Nottingham Forest when they won 2 European Cups in a row? Why not like Everton, who dominated in the 80s? If you know what I mean, why now? Why? It's all, none of it is fair, right? None of it is fair, and this is where we have the issue.
I think that, and of course, I sounded very, I don't know. I don't know. I sounded like a dick, basically. My English is failing me right now. Earlier, when I was saying about sports, man, of course, I do a football podcast, and I love the sports. I'm just saying that all of a sudden, it's like when all of a sudden you realize all of this is about money. But the reality of things is that this has been about money all along. And people like my dad and people like Adam, who support the smaller teams, they've been probably warning us, this is about to happen, this is about to happen, it will happen. And eventually a rupture has happened. And I think that there are many different sides to consider. And then we'll get more into why this is ethically wrong. But we have to consider the clubs that, as I was saying off mic, they are more and more like companies. And once again, if I was hearing myself speak 5 years ago, I would be like, what the fuck, dude? You're like so materialistic and everything. No, simply I've been alive for 5 important years in which I've started working. I've started opening my own business and stuff. And I know that everything is ruled by money. And I think that, ironically, clubs are almost the least responsible in all this, because as much as power hungry and greedy as Agnelli can be, he didn't wake up one morning and said, I'm going to steal football from people. He said, he simply looks.
If anyone did, he did. Either him or Perez.
Yeah,
it's
right,
between
right.
him or Perez, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Florentino Perez. I can see him more like, but definitely, like, I would never be in that position, because I would never want to be the head of a company, because I know that you have to put your hands in dirt and shit. They definitely enjoy that. But once there is, in this system, that person needs to exist. And when that person exists, it thinks about the profit of the company and what's more profitable for the company, what is going to keep the company make more money. This is Super League. Now, who else is to consider? The football players, as I was saying, all these salaries. And that's when my dad stopped following football. And I'm talking 2005, 2006. It was like, I'm sick of this shit. He doesn't even know about the whole Neymar paying him, like buying himself to go to PSG. He doesn't know anything about this, but he was already like, I'm tired of this shit. Players whining about 1 million more, 1 million less. Like, where are the players where are the new Tottis? Like, when we have accepted, this is what my friend Michael was saying earlier, we have accepted figures like Ibrahimovic at some point, right? And Ibrahimovic is kind of the emblem of this. Like, I will go where the money is and I will win a league.
But also, to an extent, we have to turn around, Tommy, and say, if in teaching they decided that the market offered 300 grand a week for teachers and another place offered you 350 grand a week for teachers, you would take the 350 grand a week for teachers, because everybody, like, it's the industry that has created this. It's not player driven.
Yeah.
I don't think the wages are player driven. It's been club driven, and
it's been driven by clubs, but it's been driven by the associations themselves. It's been driven also by UEFA. It's been driven by FIFA. It's been a global like thing of just throwing money into football because people love it and people will spend money for it until the market is saturated and it's going to explode and the revolution is needed. Now, this is the wrong type of revolution, but what I'm ultimately hoping is that this whole shit will make a giant nuclear like cloud and football will kind of restart from somewhere more equal. Because right now, FIFA and UEFA, and then I will let you guys discuss, FIFA and UEFA, they look like these angels with this, white sword, and they're like, we defend the football is for the people, yeah. Dude, where have you been? Come on, man. Where the fuck have you been this whole time when people were complaining about ticket prices? You have been not considering the fans for super fucking long. So right now, I'm on your side, UEFA, but only right now, for 5 minutes only. And you've got my attention for 5 minutes. But yeah, there is a lot to consider going into this. But I just want to make sure that people understand that I'm also super gutted about this. And I do not think that the Super League would be fun or entertaining to follow.
So let's talk about FIFA and UEFA's role in this, right? Let's talk about what UEFA can do and how have they allowed this to happen. Now, we know that... I don't know about you, but when there was all those arrests at FIFA and everything felt a bit like the last days of Rome and everyone's like, oh my God, things are going to change, right? And then they just replace him with fucking Platini or they replace him with Infantino and the whole thing is just the cycle's just repeated again, right? So we know now that the chance they had to make a clean break and to make changes, they didn't take it, right? So for them now to present themselves as, you're right, this white knight on a horse to save the morals of football is incredibly, incredibly hard to take. So what can UEFA do to stop this now? What I think the punishment should be quick and very severe. But what do you think, Adam? What can UEFA be doing to try and defend our beloved game?
I think the first thing they did wrong was literally bow down 24 hours after that announcement and say 36 teams can go into the Champions League in 2 years' time. I mean, it's one of those where they're just seemingly just don't seem to learn from previous experiences. They don't seem to set a precedent. The problem is you've got people that probably have the right intentions, but actually, again, we're still being run by people that really don't seem to progress the game or don't seem to have the stance of the ordinary football supporter. And this is the problem. I mean, I remember the Champions League when you used to have those days of teams from every country. So you had Panathinaikos, Legios,
Boa Vista. Do you remember Boa Vista?
Yeah. So this is what I mean. So that was the true Champions League that I was brought up on. And these days, you just, it's anyone that can finish fourth. They can still win. It's just crazy, isn't it? But then this is the problem. That's the society thing. We've kind of gone to it and sort of said, right, this is extra money if we do it this way. And, you know, we just, UEFA need to really just get some balls, grow some balls and just set a precedent and say, listen, like they've been kind of insinuating is that you won't participate in future tournaments. The problem is I listened to a podcast earlier today with an ex-footballer who kind of said, they don't care because if the money's in the Super League, they'll probably just sacrifice it. And that's the problem, I suppose. What maybe Tommy was alluding to is that morality. You know, we don't maybe see those players necessarily with the ethics to stand up to this because at the end of the day, they've got a short span in terms of their careers. I mean, we've seen it with players going to China to earn a living, for example, and we wouldn't have gone, why would you go over there to earn money? Wouldn't you want to be at a prestigious European club, earn all the medals, and then kind of go to your grandkids, look at me, this was me when I was younger, yeah? And you just don't see that. And I think that's the problem. So there is that balancing act around morality and what can a player do. And this is the thing, even when I've listened to other podcasts where it's involving players, they've kind of said, do you know what? Even they're kind of split in terms of personality. Some of them want to go into the game to earn money, and that's it. Afterwards, you don't hear from them at all. And then you've got the others that actually, you know, they truly want to play. They want to earn and be recognized for their skills. But like Tommy's probably trying to allude to, we probably will not see that generation for at least another 10 years because that Gen Z that's coming through right now, they have got that morality because you've seen it with what they do with, say, environmentalism. And maybe that will come through. But right now, if we're talking purely football, we are still dictated by money. And that's ultimately what the problem is. So these like organizations like FIFA and UEFA have just got to have some balls and just stand up to it.
I 100% agree with you, Adam, and thank you for. If you do speak a foreign language, and you know that sometimes when you try to express your thoughts in a foreign language, especially if you feel strongly about them, maybe they don't come across as you wanted them to. But I think that the thing that, okay, we've seen all posts about football. Actually, one thing that I really liked, I don't know if you guys saw it, was the quote unquote by Ander Herrera from PSG.
Yes,
he was one, and I was like, I'm curious to see what football players are going to say, because if Aubameyang had spoken about like the beauty of the game, and like I would have been like, bullshit. But Ander Herrera, from what I know, and Mr. Kobayashi is the people's champion. He says Mr. Kobayashi is a United fan. From what I recall, he came through, off the top of my head, from Real Sociedad, went to Manchester United, never fussed, never said anything about a contract, went to PSG, and to play at those levels for so many years without making people talk badly about you, it means that you're a hardworking professional. And I really liked reading his quote. I think
there's
that
Bruno Fernandes has come out today as well, which I think is the first player from a club involved to come out, which I think is really interesting. Obviously, this is a conversation I've been having today of like, I wonder which players are going to have the bollocks at Arsenal to actually come out and say something. I'm putting my mortgage on none of them, but it will be intriguing to see which players do come out, and fair play to them, right? I think for Fernandes to come out and say, look, this isn't what any of us want, that is maybe the first domino that will lead to more players expressing themselves. The point you made about, for a lot of footballers, this is a job. It is a job. It's not their passion. It's just a way of them making a lot of money, and that's fine too. If you know what I mean, we all go into jobs to earn money, right? That's why we're here. So I think you can't really judge them for that. But yeah, I think I'm hoping that many will speak up because they ultimately have the power ultimately.
Absolutely. And if football is kind of going to die, hear me out now, this is a hot take. If football is kind of going to die out, I don't think that it's going to be because of the Super League. I think also because I think like the interest, I teach kids, you do too, Rory. Do they have the same excitement about football that we used to have when we were kids? Sometimes, but not so much. Like I think they kind of have other interests, but I don't think that the Super League is going to kill football. Like if you like football, if you like playing football, you're not going to. If you're a kid, you're not going to look at the Super League and be like, I wish I could play there. No, it's like if kids, if they want to play football, they're going to keep playing football. But what I hate about it is that ideally, potentially, I would want fucking Barletta from Puglia, potentially, to get to a Champions League final, which I know that with the system that is in place right now is potentially possible. Of course, it would require Barletta to be purchased by an American investor who has a wife from Puglia, and then he gets Barletta, beam, boom, bam, they're up. They win the Italian league and they go to the Champions League final. But you see, then too, it entails money. And I don't want to sound like,
but that was always the way. That was always the way, Tommy. Even when football started, the richest clubs were winning. That's never been any different.
But the thing is that also, like this year, I don't remember who told me this. Like I was saying, like it's insane to think about how much a footballer earns. But then you think about it and you're like, holy fuck, like I work out every single day. There are influencers making the same money that I do, but I work my ass off. I miss a penalty. People fucking send death threats to me. Mm-hmm. Why am I not worth more than an influencer? And this is just to say that it's the fucking world that we live in. I think that right now, this is not a political podcast, but I think that we...
Not yet. Not until I finally have my way.
Not until right now. But I think that this is telling about how fucked up the world we live in is, because so many things are coming to an ending. Like, so we are realizing more and more that with the way we're doing things has worked until now, and it made sense until now, but it's not really viable anymore. And football as we're doing it is not viable anymore. And we have allowed for it to happen over and over again. And Roy and I, we were cheering last week, talking about Man City, PSG. That's the semi-final we want, we said, because we have also been part of this. We have been enjoying this. And these are the consequences. This is how it works, unfortunately. I think that a big reform is needed. I think this is I don't know if somebody's going to come along, but this is like when you watch a movie, the moment when everything is about to fall apart, and then that scholar from that specific little university comes up with a great project to save football. And I think that that's what we need. We need really some people who really care about this, who have the knowledge to do this, to sit down and be like, how can we make this more equal? And isn't this like UEFA's slogan as well? Like the equal game or something? Like, let's actually sit down all together, hear everybody out, and find a viable way to do it. But I know that this sounds like utopia big time.
It's we can but hope. So the one thing I wanted to talk about, there's another thing I wanted to talk about with the energy being stirred up on social media, including this show. I really wanted to talk about, we need to maintain this energy, right? What can we do to make sure that the football fans of social media stay united to fight the other problems that are facing football? So I've seen a lot of people on Twitter today, a lot of Black people, Asian people who have been saying, where were your attitudes? Where were your tweets when it came to racism in the game, right? Where was this? And this is something that now on the pod, we've tried to talk about it every episode when it happens. We've tried to be a voice of, as much as two middle-class white guys can be, we've tried to be a voice on it, right? So how can we make sure that this energy is maintained? What can we do to encourage people to keep this energy going? Anybody, this is open to anyone, by the way.
I think all you've got to do is contain or just continue this kind of message of, do you know what? We are losing our game right now. And if we don't do anything right now, it is going to be gone. These clubs that you love and adore are going to disappear completely. And this is the thing. We've just got to continue that conversation and put the pressure on these clubs. Do you know what? When you're allowed to go back to watching football, send the message, don't turn up. It's going to be really hard because there's not going to be that majority of people. But I think that's going to be the first thing that we do is show up by numbers, show people that it can be done, and continue that every time until you get to a point where no one gains from this. So don't buy merchandise from these clubs. It's going to be hard. It's going to hurt their pockets. And you know what? For the likes of Levy, he can't afford to lose money right now. So again, you've just got to do little things. Something that Tommy said offline was around what those hooligans are doing right now. And they're probably the kind of voice of reason to an extent, because they are going down that really harsh measures of saying, look, we're going to have to show these guys what it actually means. I mean, I've heard of many stories about the 80s and the Italians and how they used to, club supporters were running those clubs, right? It wasn't the case the other way around where you're seeing it right now. So, yeah, we've got to kind of show that the clubs are owned by the fans, not by the people that have got the big buckets of money, right? So that's the only way you do it.
Look, and I've got the Celtic jersey hanging from behind me, and inside in the collar, it says, football is nothing without the fans. And it's really true. And here again, it's just to bring a little bit of spice to the conversation. But once again, off mic, I was saying, we have fought so hard to eliminate the villains from football in England, the hooligans. And right now, the clubs have become the villains. But we're realizing that that's a little harder problem to eradicate. So at the end of the day, there have been, look, the world is in constant evolution. And there is this quote right now. I don't want to get philosophical also because this is probably the only philosophical quote that I really know. But I think it's very interesting. So look, this is by Hegel, and it's everything that is real is rational. And with this, I will say it first, with this sentence, you can justify the Holocaust if you wanted to. But of course, if you look at the state of things, they are happening for a reason. It's because this system has been flawed for so long because we didn't listen to the Adams and the My Dads and all the people, Arrigo Sacchi back in the day, Arrigo Sacchi, whom I used to consider, he's kind of getting old and he just speaks too much sometimes. But Arrigo Sacchi, he kind of called out the whole Calciopoli scandal before it happened. These things have been in place for so long, and by overlooking them, in the end they happen. We've been throwing so much shade on hooligans, and we've been making hooligans sound like these horrible people that only care about fighting. I've never been an ultras. I will never claim that I have been an ultras, but I have been in the ultras section for Inter Milan for quite some time. And as much as I don't like the whole lot of racism that there is in the Intercurva, the whole lot of ignorance that there is, I know that these people, for that club, they do a lot of things. There are people designed to come up with a plan for the whole design of the choreography, the people printing the single pieces of paper, and these people have families. These people do not work in an investment bank. These people literally dedicate their lives to the football. And the clubs, the players, they have been ignoring these people. These people have been demonized by the media, but at the end, they were carrying the right message, football is for us. Of course, if you stab the opposition fan, that's not a good way to prove it, that you're caring about football. If you smash a beer bottle on their head, that doesn't make sense. But of course, then there is the exaggeration of it. But at the core, the message that they were carrying is right. We care about this team. We don't care about the fucking money. We want that when you have this badge on your shirt, you literally give it your all. This is what we want to see. And then it's ironic because while you support the club, you also support the 80 million pounds that they spend for Lukaku. You also support all the shady business that there is that we don't talk about. It's a really fine line. But connecting back to what Adam was saying, yes, as fans, by the way, I never purchase this. This is my best friends. I don't buy merchandise from my own team. No, I do, but you're right,
That's
Adam.
just because you're
This is
cheap. That's not a moral thing.
Exactly. That's just because I'm cheap. Otherwise, man, they've got 6 jackets this year. But no, Adam is right. Like, next year, if the season tickets, if you really care about this thing and they are going to release season tickets, do not tell your dad, do not go for it. Do not go yourself buy season tickets for that team. Do not buy the television rights. Try to watch it on stream. See, once again, I'm cheap. I do it every day.
Illegal streams. Now it is your moral duty to watch illegal streams.
Yes.
Watch them all at once. Every screen in your house, get the illegal streams going.
Exactly. And yeah, just boycott it. But again, I hope that the players are going to unite for a second and be like, we stand against this. Do you think this is possible, Adam, that players are going to just sit down and be like, let's put a barrier against this?
Probably not. That's the only problem, is that there is going to be, like I've said before, there's still going to be those supporters that, or should I say players that want to earn a living. They've got, short lifestyles. They, in terms of their playing careers, they want to support their families or themselves for future to come, maybe set up their own businesses, right? So again, they're probably in that position where I think there will be some that will take that moral stance, and we've heard about them, but I don't think there's enough to kind of say that. But I do genuinely feel like, I know we've seen, I think it was Chris that said, actually, it doesn't feel like boycotts are going to be the answer, but it has to start somewhere. Now, I'm not saying I've got the answers to it, but again, when you start seeing the effects of other clubs that have had boycotts, so I'm talking about Wimbledon, for example, and someone like Blackpool, for example, that had notoriously bad owners. Those supporters went for about 3 to 5 years of hell by not attending their stadium. That must have been really drenching on them. But the moment they came back, it was their own club. It was their club. And that's the thing. It's not going to be straight away fix. And that's the thing. I will hands up and say it's not going to happen straight away. But yeah, this is what we've got to do. We've got to make a start somewhere.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, the boycotting is. I think Chris made a comment before about boycotting isn't enough. We need to protest. I agree, but boycotting is a start. I think it's going to be hard enough to get everyone to boycott, let alone getting everyone to protest. So I think boycotting is the least we can do to try and stop this. But we wanted to talk about how much do the Premier League, going back to an English kind of view on it, how much do the Premier League and Sky, how much have they made their bed now? How much have they led to this? Because for me, I think Sky especially, with their over-dramatization of deadline day, with their shifting around kickoff time so Newcastle and Sunderland fans can't go to away games without taking 3 days off work. They've never at any point, they've put in the bricks for this ignoring of the fans, right? And now they're not getting it their way. They seem to be throwing their dummies out the pram, right? So how much have they made this bed for themselves?
Again, it's one of those, like you say rightly, they're the ones that started this revolution in terms of how this kind of perception of football clubs becoming businesses right now. And you've got so many of these clubs lower down leagues that are trying to aspire to be that level. But the problem is, Sky can't then be critical when clubs want to do their own things, right? I think there was that huge kind of furore when they tried to set up their own TV channels, right? And it was like, wow, that's taking away from potentially what we can do. But at the same time, clubs have bowed down and they've taken the money as well. So it goes two ways. So you can't moan at the same time. But yeah, I mean, it's a real difficult one because I actually felt like if you were a sponsor of these clubs that are breaking away, do you want that to be connected to you now? Would you be happy and comfortable with being associated with these clubs right now? Because, in terms of morality, does that kind of convey something to you as a brand? I don't know. But there's going to be a few that might think differently after what's been announced in the last 24 hours.
We can hope. I'm not holding my breath on Fly Emirates thinking differently, but hopefully some of them can. Yeah, we've had some interesting comments. So football won't die. They've said that multiple times. My dad is here. Hello, Dad. Football won't die. They've said it multiple times. They said it when Now, the East Ham versus Newcastle is when the guy went from Newcastle to Arsenal, I believe. And when they brought in the Bosman rule, they said it many times that football won't die. Will we just see it evolved into a different thing? Tommy, you kind of touched on this before. What do you think?
I don't think, look, I'm just worried. I teach kids and I ask if they play football, but they're just like, yeah, I play football. It's not like, yeah, I want to become a professional football player. It's like, yeah, I play football just because I have to play a sport. I think there is, when I started teaching, I thought it was weird because I thought this is what I'm going to be talking to kids all day long. Football, right? Mm-hmm. Not so much. I don't think football is going to die. I think like every little thing is going to evolve. But we haven't really, it's just going to evolve. It's going to change. Let's not forget that the Champions League, the Europa League, the Copa UEFA, they've undergone reforms before. But this is actually not a reform. This is like creating an elitary league. That's why it's kind of scary. Then I saw this post on Instagram about Florentino Perez to say, they won't be able to participate in the World Cup. We'll organize our own World Cup. Wait, what? Like, what do you mean you'll organize your own World Cup? And I mean, once again, FIFA have a lot, like, where were FIFA and UEFA all this time? Like, when you know that something like this, I mean, us three, we knew that this was in the works. FIFA and UEFA must have known this for ages now. Where is their counterattack? How have they prepared against this? They haven't. Organizations like FIFA, they have been too busy maybe covering up all the shit they've been doing in Qatar for the next World Cup. So I understand they've been busy and they've had other things in their mind. But maybe a blessing in disguise might be that an association, a very rigged and unethical association like FIFA, maybe will eventually come to the end. And maybe clubs will find an organization that can start from zero. There can be new values and can be, I don't think that if an organization was kind of more club run, it would be that bad. But I understand that it's a very like communistic approach to the whole thing, like, and it's very utopistic, like everybody's equal, everybody's got the same rights. Unfortunately, until we live in this system, money in the end is going always to have the last word. It does in everything. Why wouldn't it in football? It does in our everyday life for so many aspects. I don't see why football would be exempt from it, really. But I just think it's a shame because we have been telling listeners in our podcast and like we've been spatting this over and over again when our friends talk to us about baseball and American football, and we say, but soccer, European football is the people's sport. It used to be, man. It used to be. It's still the people's sport because you can play it without anything. You just need really a ball of rags. And in that regard, it is still the people's sport. But it's not the people. It's not the fans' sport anymore. It's not the sport of the fans. Everything, man. When they started with the Juventus, I think that the first time that I really realized that Juventus was ending is when Juventus played. I think their first Serie A home game at their new stadium, and the choreography from the hooligan section was #Juve. That was the choreography, man. #Juve. Now, since I've been at the stadium and I know how these things are organized, I clearly know that this is organized by Juventus. They put the flyers that the supporters would normally put on the seats. They put your banner. It's going to have a team thing because that's the sponsor of Serie A, and everybody's going to raise it at the same time. Yeah, that's what we also do in the other hooligan sections in the stadiums in Italy, but it's organized by the fans, and it says, fuck you, AC Milan, like, fuck my dick. And then it's changing, and there is a picture of the AC Milan devil getting a dick in his butt. Like, that's the beautiful thing about it. I don't want even my fans to speak the language of the club. And when the two things intertwine, then it becomes really, really dangerous, in my opinion. That's the first time that I was like, aren't they embarrassed of this? Like #Juve? That's your.
So this is something we also talked about off mic. But the difference in the game experience between England and Italy, now it's something we've talked about a lot. But the Juve are the only all-seater stadium, right? Is it the only all-seater stadium?
I think so. Yeah.
Like, and that says it all. Like the fact that when I go to San Siro, it still feels like going to football in England in the, I imagine, the 80s. I was there for the 90s. It feels like going to football then. So, yeah, in the Premier League, Adam, again, we were talking about this. In the Premier League, we've been used to this for a while, right? And how sanitized do you feel that the game experience has become?
Yeah, it's not what we sometimes see of other leagues. Let's put it that way, where you can see the atmosphere bouncing, where you can see fans. I mean, I've been lucky enough because of my heritage, Polish football. I've been able to see that now. That's a kind of different kettle of fish, completely. And yeah, when I was young enough and I wanted to see a Polish team, I was told you can't go to that match because it was that violent, it was that crazy. And obviously, that's the thing. You're not exposed to that in England. You just really, I mean, maybe saw a little bit of it towards the late 90s where hooliganism kind of was coming back in, and then it got like kind of contained again. But yeah, I mean, it's just, it's not the kind of experience. It's more of a family-orientated experience when it comes to English football clubs. And you see that going down the leagues as well. So it's not kind of the boys kind of team, not like evening out or anything like that. It is all about the whole experience for any range of fans. And that's the difference between, I suppose, when you go into Europe, when you see, say, Legia Warsaw versus Wisła Łódź, or, Legia Warsaw versus Wisła Krakow, for example, they are boisterous events. They are not about families in those environments.
Yeah, definitely not. I went to the Krakow derby and it was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, the Holy War derby.
One thing that I wanted to
terrifying.
One thing that I wanted to read a comment by our friend of the pod, Bryce. Also, let's talk about the 5 teams that are invited, in quotation marks, into the Super League every year. That's not a situation ripe for scandal or collusion or anything, right? Yeah, that's a great point. Like, those 5 teams, they're going to be, man, the mail service with all the bribes is going to be very slow in delivering messages in those days. But
it will be cutthroat as fuck trying to get that invite. Yeah.
But also, I was thinking, thank you, Adam, for the leeway about your descent, your Polish descent. Now, when I moved to Milan, so I grew up in a small town in central Italy, and I already was an Inter fan, but I didn't live the away fans in my city experience, really. The first time that away fans were in Milan, when I moved here, and they went to Duomo Square, I believe it was Dutch supporters for a game against AC Milan in the group stage. I was like, oh, dude, like, this is fucking cool. Like, look at all these drunk Dutch people, like, colonizing the main square in my city, screaming AC Milan, fuck you, with their own flags, like, taking over the city in a time where we're not at war, but it kind of feels like, we're putting our flag up here, like, we'll put our scarf against the... Now, I think that Roy and I addressed this in one of our early episodes, why we love the Champions League. It's also this clash of cultures. It's also the Polish team coming to Milan, and that there will be that one time that you're taking the subway to the stadium and the Bulgarian supporter will ask you for directions and you will end up walking to the stadium with them. It's also that these games, I repeat it once again, they are not meant for us 3. They're not meant for Steve, who's following us on the chat. They're not meant for Bryce. They are meant for, and this is not to be racist, but this is all targeted to an ever-growing Asian audience of people that will be in Europe. Oh, look, what can I do tonight? It's Inter Arsenal. How much are the tickets? I have the money to buy them, regardless from the price. But once again, it's not going to be the Super League. It's not for us. We will watch it in television. If it stands like it is, I want to make it a statement to never buy a ticket for that competition. But it's really not meant for us, and it's not meant for the fans. And football has been dividing, but also uniting a lot. And I feel like many things that I know also of like geography and like the interest that I have on world culture also sometimes stemmed from football. Even having this podcast, how many times have I had to research who this player was, where was he brought up, and then you get into the politics, and then you were like, oh, he used to play for Yugoslavia, but now he plays for this other team. There is also history involved, there is culture, there is language. This Super League is going to erase all of that. Is going to erase the fans chanting in Polish in your city. It's always going to be fucking Arsenal and Inter, and it's going to be boring because there's not going to be the real Englishman at the stadium in the San Siro. It's not going to be him. It's going to be other people, like casual fans that are just there to take a picture and post it on social media. That's
I want to take your point and take it to one extra step. Once they get to the point where, you know, you're saying that it's for people in Bangkok to watch it, it's for people in Beijing to watch it, and we know that basically they're aiming for an NFL system, right? This is what they're looking at. How far away are we from them becoming franchises? From all of a sudden, Arsenal don't need to be London Arsenal. They can be traveling Arsenal. They can be Harlem Globetrotters Arsenal, right? Is this a natural progression from it? I wish, right? Harlem Globetrotters. But is this a natural progression? And do they get to the point where, like in the NFL, all the owners can get together and decide which players have a career and which players don't, like they did with Colin Kaepernick? Like the player who sticks their head above the parapet, fuck you, your career's done, you're never playing a game again. Is this where we get to as well? Like, I think it is if it goes through, it is a very slippery slope. And not just because it's American owned, but it's an American system they're aiming for.
Yeah,
you can go.
I was going to say, I mean, it is getting to a point where you are starting to see those next steps, aren't you? You're starting to see that naturally kind of sway that way. But it completely goes away from our traditions of what we know of football. And this is the thing I think we need to do as much as we can to preserve even the traditions that we have, because right now we are losing the very ethics of what we know football. I mean, I hope to God that I can tell my son what football actually is and what I don't want to kind of reflect it and say, it used to be like this. And now going right now, current day, actually, it is now being played in Sydney because that's where Chelsea versus Arsenal is now going to take place these days. And that's the kind of worry, isn't it? It's kind of saying, what is the next generation going to look like? Is it going to be someone that's embedded because they came from that same region? It probably isn't now. But we knew that because the big clubs have evolved in terms of their bases. We saw it with Man United in the 90s when obviously Sir Alex Ferguson was taking these teams to, say, China, to different places, but all the other clubs kind of cottoned onto it. And that's the problem, is like, where does the traditions kind of end? And I think it's slowly evading right now.
And Bryce has just made a very good point, like what Arsenal did to Ozil. That's a very, very good point. They decided his career was done because he had an opinion. I take that. It's happened already.
You kind of cut off for a second, Rory, so I'll repeat what you said. Rory was saying that, Bryce commented that Arsenal did what the San Francisco 49ers, I believe, did to Colin Kaepernick, kind of. They did the same thing to Mesut Ozil. But to end on a high note, I just wanted to say that I have rarely seen such a popular movement on Instagram or on social media in general about anything, really. The opinions are always split. In this case, the fans really seem to agree on one thing and on one thing only. Fans from all the teams, from the majority of the teams involved, I would say a lot of fans from the majority of the teams involved and fans in general, they've been kind of, no, this is not what we want. And another thing is that I've been reading, and right now we would need another hour to read all the Instagram posts that I've saved. People like us who have an independent podcast, many of these posts were Italian, but they were highly poetic about like what we love about football, why we don't want it to change and everything. And there was one post that I particularly liked. Well, the first one was the one about Agnelli not being at the stadium as Atalanta scored the winner versus Juventus, and the news about the Super League was released. That was my favorite. But then there was another one that said, luckily, no matter how this will change, those legendary deeds by Batistuta at Wembley or whatever. I mean, Totti in the World Cup, that penalty versus Australia, I think they will be even more amplified. And in our memories, if this is going to change forever, we will really cherish that moment and those moments. And again, Rory, I don't know if you remember this, but we once had a discussion about what should our podcast focus on. And at first, we only wanted it to be a weekly topic dedicated to something from the past, because we said there is too much shit in today's football. And then we were like, well, for our listeners, we kind of owe it to them to also keep them updated with what's going on currently. But that feeling that we were kind of a nostalgic podcast, that we really love to relive these moments that, matter of fact, like it feels like they have disappeared in everyday's football. It was already there like last year in February, before all of this madness unfolded.
That is a very good point, and maybe that is where the future of the pod lies. Just looking backwards. But before we finish this, because we are slightly overrunning, Tommy, I've got one more question for you. Just one question to finish the pod.
They're not.
What happens if Serie A take away your Scudetto, Tommy?
All right. If Serie A take away our Scudetto and the Super League ends up unfolding, we will forever be the last Italian team to win the Champions League.
There we go.
So you know that very famous meme of the bus inspector checking for tickets, and there is an Inter Milan fan, and he's like, "Ticket, please." And the Inter Milan fan says, "I've never been in Serie B, and I've won a treble." And the bus inspector is like, "Oh, sorry. This is one other thing that we could say. We were the last Italian team to win the Champions League." But no, man, honestly, one word, if they take away the Scudetto from us, bullshit, because this season was played regularly. And it would be super Inter and super my life if that happened.
It'd be hilarious. We'll still have a Scudetto party. We'll have an unofficial Scudetto party.
Big time. But
Adam, when you can travel, you're coming over for it. Don't worry.
Definitely.
Adam, thank you so much for joining us tonight on such short notice, and thank you to everybody: Bryce, Steve, Massimo, Fabio. There were a lot of you. Marco, Rory's dad. Thank you a lot for joining. We really wanted to get these things off our chest. You understand that we're slightly shook by this thing. We are hoping that eventually it doesn't unfold, but we will always be here. The Anglo-Italian pod is going to continue strong. It went through coronavirus. We can go through the Super League. Maybe we will just cover the newborn Champions League with West Ham, champions of Europe. Who knows?
That would be that's the dream, right? Let's get West Ham the Premier League title and the Champions League trophy. That is the campaign we're pushing for now. Fuck it. But thank you for joining us, guys. More than likely, we will be talking about this again on Thursday, but we'll try and talk about proper football or anything that seems to matter. Again, Adam, thank you for coming on. And I think that's a wrap, Tommy, no?
Yeah, that's a wrap. And kind of an exciting news. We have another footballer on next Friday's episode, but we're not going to say anything about her. This is all we can tell you. This is all we can tell you, but we're very excited. Our second female guest, it's our first female professional footballer. We're very excited about this, and we're going to talk about another possible silver lining of the Super League, which might give more visibility to women's football, which is another thing that is really needed in today's game. Adam, do you want to say anything to our watchers and listeners? How can we find you on Instagram, Twitter, social media, Apple Podcasts?
Yeah, you just have to search for the Hopeless Wonder podcast and just go at Hopeless Pod on Twitter and the Hopeless Wonder podcast on Instagram. Apologies, it's just suddenly gone dark here, so I don't know what happened there. I've obviously not paid for the electric. But yeah, no, just follow us. We'd love to have you listening to our show, and it's brilliant. So yeah, gotta love it.
Thank you very much, Adam. Once again, fix your lighting problem. Go pay the bill. It seems like the electricity in our computer is working, though, and you don't know Wi-Fi too. So that's fine. Rory, I'll see you on a Thursday night to record for a brand new episode, number 44, I believe.
44, baby. Nearly half a century. Let's do it.
Goodbye, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.